It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey, Not the Face with your host, John Nash, and your producer, me, Steffi Haynes. And today we are going to look at some new updates to the UFC antitrust cases. We're going to talk about Nico Ali Walsh's very cryptic tweet yesterday saying that he'd spoke to senators. We're going to talk about the Haney-Keyshawn Davis purse bid that's going to be live streamed on July 27th. We're going to talk a little bit about Eddie Hearn and DAZN and UFC and Salahdine Parnasse. We have a lot of things to talk about. But before we get into all of that, I'm going to need y'all to pick up a paid subscription because all of our episodes are divided into two parts. There's a free part and a paywall part. We split them right down the middle. So you get to listen to the first half for free, but if you want to keep going, you got to pony up a few bucks. We are on the lowest tier. I think it's the lowest tier. We just charge $5 a month. You know, it's pretty cheap to listen to us, and you help us keep the lights on and keep chugging along. So we do appreciate all of our subscribers, paid and otherwise. And while you're at it, please share this and all of our shows on your socials, because that also helps us too, whether it be Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, share it. Now, John, how the heck are you? Because you've been coughing a little bit, and I'm worried about you.
I have a little bit of a cold, chest cold. That's my doctor gave me a prescription, told me to double up my albuterol, which I normally don't take much of, and then to also give me some steroids. So I'm going to go to the gym afterwards, pump some iron, hoping to take advantage of that like Connor did, get buff.
You're going to end up with your chest being all barrel-chested like a person with emphysema, because the only thing that's going to buff up are your lungs.
I guess I should have been more specific about what type of steroids I wanted from my doctor. He did not. I don't know if he gave me the right ones.
So I got to give a quick shout out to Des Berry. He's one of our listeners. He's a friend. He's a paid subscriber. But Des Berry keeps us up to date with all the UFC Freedom 250 auctions that are ongoing to this day. Now, the auctions have since slowed down and people aren't buying. There's a lot of stuff that's been running for a couple of weeks and there's no takers. So the first batches, though, really went like hotcakes, and one item in particular has caught my eye this week, and that is Ilia Topuria's red corner stool. And it started out at 10,000 euro. And it ended up selling. And John, how much is 10,000 euro in American dollars?
I believe, based on the last conversion I saw, I haven't looked it up recently, it's around 12,500. It's about 25% more. But let's check really quick. Euro to dollar. What is the calculator right now? Oh, it's only 14. So it's actually gone down in the last few days. So now it is 10,000, 11,500 roughly.
Okay, so anyways, the person that won the stool paid 18,000 US dollars. But what's funny is Patty Pimlet had a lot of people out there believing for about a day and a half that he was the purchaser of the stool, because he made a social media post holding a red corner stool and saying that he had bought it. And this woman comes out on socials and she is righteously indignant. She is pissed off. And she came with receipts, the actual framed receipt from where she won the auction and paid $18,000 for that red corner stool. She put so much money in the UFC's pocket that Ilia Topuria will never see. John, what do you think of that?
Well, first I want to when I saw that, I almost tagged Des, because Des does a great job of keeping us up to date on the degenerates that buy this merchandise, this memorabilia, which I did not realize there's a whole subculture. So my first question was, do you recognize this degenerate? Because you were immersed in this world. I don't know if I didn't get a chance to ask him that, but that would be my first question. Second is, he gave us a list of all the items that we're selling, not all of them, but a bunch of them as examples. And I'm wondering if that stool was one of the items that he listed for us.
Yes, it was in the first listing that he gave us back on June 24th. It was the very first item on the screenshot, as a matter of fact, which was how I know how much that stool started out, what the starting bid was, which was 10,000 euro.
Jeez. I did not. There's a whole world of collectors out there I had no idea existed. You know what? I got to be honest, Des. I might have been happier not knowing. I don't know if I needed to know about this, but now that I do, it's amazing how much additional revenue that they can pull in on this stuff.
Yeah. And, I tried to tell you, John, that they were going to keep making money. And you were like, no, it's not going to be that much. But look at this. This is freaking crazy. Look at me. I'm holding back the fucks here in the beginning of the show. But although I just dropped one, I was trying to hold them back. I was trying to follow your lead. But, you've been all over the place lately. So
we're saving that for the beyond the paywall. So that bomb. So
now, before we get into our main show proper, I got to ask you a bit of an entertainment question that might be intertwined with some of the things that we normally talk about. Now, I have seen, like I'm sure everybody else has, lots and lots to do with this Paramount deal buying Warner Brothers, and all, Warner Brothers Discovery, all that stuff. And, to date, 12 states attorneys general have filed cases, have filed lawsuits, have, drawn the line in the sand. And then another federal judge has put an injunction, is that what it is? A hold, an injunction, whatever, of anywhere from 14 to 28 days before anything else can happen. And so I saw this article put out by the Ankler. And there are three options. They can roll the dice and fight in court. That would drag out well into 2027. Or they can, which would add $3 billion or so to an already heavy debt load. Or they can pay, cut a $7 billion check. And I forget what the third option was, but the point I'm making here is there's a lot of problems in paradise with Paramount and the Oracle guys, the Ellisons. Oracle's in big financial difficulties, financial straits. They're going, kind of going broke. Is there any scenario from what you've read out there from all of this stuff that would affect the UFC, that would affect TKO?
Well, for the Oracle, first I want to note, Oracle's not going broke per se. Their stock price has definitely gone down from its high of last year, about a year ago. It's cratered to less than half. It's lost 60% of its value, and it's back to where it was before, basically before the boom 2 years ago, let's say. So it's still a valuable company, but they also are carrying a lot of debt because they're building a lot of these AIs, data centers and stuff. They've really doubled down on that. But the question is, what's going to happen? Oracle's one thing, and there's a whole question of the whole AI thing's going to be a bubble and what will happen and when that bursts. And I'm starting to lean towards it definitely being a bubble. I think Dean Baker makes a pretty strong argument why it's a bubble. But what happens to Warner Brothers? Because Warner Brothers, Ellison, the son, is dependent on his dad's money, Oracle, basically, to help finance this. And it's a super expensive merger, and they rolled the dice in the merger to begin with. This first the merger between Paramount and Skydance, and then the merger between Paramount, Skydance, and Warner Brothers to make this kind of the super entity. basically monopolize. They're trying to create another market power within the concentrated power within the entertainment business. And that's the roll of the dice, but they're facing a lot of troubles right now. And us here in Hollywood, I live in Hollywood, and everybody knows, we're paying attention to this. It's extremely unpopular, this merger. And it's, part of it is politics, I'm sure, because a lot of people don't like the Ellisons because they've allied with the Trump administration. This is generally a liberal town. But no one was happy, or very few people were happy, that when Warner Brothers was going to be merged with Netflix as well. Everybody hated that almost as much, maybe this a little bit more because of the liberal politics of the city, but almost as much, very despised was the idea that Netflix would acquire it. People hate the whole idea overall. And so, right now they have a 12-state antitrust suit they got to face, right? And part of that was that restraining order, I think was what you were looking for. There was a temporary restraining order put in place, so that's put in place. And so there's these antitrust lawsuits are going to go forward. They're completely dependent on the federal government to give them a free pass, which it looks like they're getting. But the states do have the right to go into private suits, and that could create problems. There are the crippling financial deadlines they're worried about. There are several. So legal delays create a kind of a clock, a ticking bomb for Paramount, because if the merger fails to close by specific deadlines, there are financial penalties tied into the deal. And the first deadline, I guess, is October 1st, 2026. If the deal remains stuck in limbo by them, Paramount must pay the Warner Brothers shareholders $650 million for every 90 days after that. Then there's additionally, they got to pay a $7 billion breakup fee if the regulatory hurdles block the deal past the absolute, I should say, drop dead date of June 4th, 2027. On that date, Paramount will have to pay the Warner Brothers shareholders every $7 billion termination fee. And so the question becomes, if they start running into more hurdles because the state lawsuits, because of we're going to have shareholder suits starting because of restraining orders, they might decide it's financially better just to cut losses now and get out of it and ahead of the big fee coming down the road. And then there's the judge in the case that oversaw the restraining order. He's already dismantled some of Paramount's primary defense strategies because the Paramount has argued that the merger is necessary to build a stronger streaming platform to rival Netflix and Amazon, and the judge flatly rejected that. He has a legal footnote that's making the rounds, stating that the economic efficiencies in one market cannot legally offset or excuse competitive harms in another market. And then there's something called the unscrambling the egg principle, where the court ruled that it is far better to freeze the deal now, because if the companies begin laying off workers and merging sensitive operations, it would be harder to unscramble the egg later, which is something that a lot of companies have for a long time have gotten away with. And then finally, there's just the town backlash against this. We got the Writers Guild of America has filed its own independent lawsuit, antitrust lawsuit against Paramount. And then we have the high-profile Hollywood talent has stepped up, signing petitions against it. So there is a lot of us, I guess, will be determined. We'll have to wait and see about the upcoming preliminary injunction hearing. If you're a UFC antitrust follower for years, you are familiar with that. So there will be a preliminary injunctive hearing on August 3rd of this year. So that will likely determine the fate of the deal, because if the judge grants the injunction, the deal will be frozen indefinitely for a full trial. And I don't know, in this financial situation with the money they're burning through, the additional costs, all these other, the amount of debt they've taken on, this could push Paramount past its financial limits. So all that's worth paying attention to. And that's just out here, because the side of impact is, how does that impact the UFC, right? That's the big question. How will that impact the UFC? And I don't really have an answer, because if they are financially, let's say, damaged tremendously by this, will they have the resources to continue to pay the UFC? It's a guaranteed contract deal for the UFC, so you'd think technically they could, but could they theoretically put themselves in such financial straits that they would have to, declare bankruptcy or some other, take some other legal action to somehow get themselves out of that contract? possibly, but I don't want to theorize too much because that's so far down the road. But for right now, I think the biggest penalty to the UFC would be that Paramount would not be the big juggernaut that they could be, that UFC maybe thinks they're signing on to, if this deal is not allowed to pass. Because if it's allowed to pass, it gives additional platforms that the UFC product and their boxing product, Zuffa Boxing, can be put on, which means many more eyeballs. A much bigger net can be cast compared to just the Paramount platform. And if the deal doesn't go through too, Paramount's going to burn through a lot of money. They might cut costs, and they might not have as compelling product on the Paramount platform, which limits eyeballs that will come on and tune in to watch the UFC.
Wow. I love that answer. I'm so glad I asked that. I know that it's sort of, should have been an official question, but I just felt with all of the basic Paramount Warner Brothers stuff that's just happening centered in Hollywood. I know 12 other states have filed suit, but the main bulk of all of this is coming out of Hollywood. And kudos to y'all for putting your line in the sand. I love that. It is definitely something to keep the eyes on.
Well, I mean, the other strong possibility is that the injunction relief is not granted on August 3rd, and everything goes back to normal.
Yeah,
then it goes through, and it was all a big hoo-ha about nothing.
Yeah, but with 12 states suing them,
Yeah, it's still got issues.
Yeah.
And they should have saw this coming. Everybody saw this coming.
The other thing that caught my eye with this thing is them threatening to pull up stakes out of California. And as soon as they said that, immediately, like 8 other, because at that time only 3 states were filing suit. As soon as they said they were going to pull up stakes out of California if things went sideways, 8 other states or 9 other states joined, basically held hands and filed suits. That was what got me, was as soon as they said that, 9 more states jumped in.
Yeah, that's a good way to lose a lot of the industry support, that any possible industry support. So a lot of the talent's going to turn against you as soon as you threaten to leave. A lot of talent doesn't live in California. A lot of people have moved outside, but the great bulk, the vast numbers of people that work in the industry, actors, directors, writers, below the line, above the line, everything, they're still out here in California.
I just love that everybody was showing y'all some solidarity, though. 9 other states filed cases against them as soon as they said they were going to pull up out of California. So I also enjoy the solidarity that's being shown for y'all. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. That's nice for once. Solidarity's good.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so now let's get into the show proper, because we do have some stuff to talk about today. As OG listeners know, we always start our official show with the same question every single episode. Are there any new filings or updates to the UFC antitrust cases?
Yes, there were a couple. There are 3, which I have forwarded you, which we will put into the show notes so people want to look at them, find my errors and what I said today when I go over them, when I summarize them here. But there were 3 filings. All I believe came out yesterday, which would be July 20th, because we're recording this on Tuesday night, the 21st. And all are connected to plaintiff statement of material missing from defendant's production, which we talked about a week or 2 ago. And this sits in the middle of the ongoing spoliation proceedings against Zuffa TKO executives as part of the Johnson v. Zuffa and all the related cases. So the first thing was Judge Wexler issued an order, and this is ruling on an earlier separate sealing dispute over a different filing. And so Magistrate Wexler, applied the good cause standard, since the underlying motion is what they call non-dispositive. What this is, it denies redaction of a line. And this is really going to get kind of dorky here, so I apologize. We should tune out. But here we go. It denies redaction of a line in plaintiff's statement referencing Dana White's communication habits. The defendants couldn't show it was confidential business info, and the court reads it as relevant to the spoliation question of whether White should have preserved text. And then it grants redaction of non-UFC email address and party fighters' names and exhibits. So, I mean, that's understandable. That stuff should not be there. Email addresses and stuff like that. Denies sealing of Exhibit 2, they call it in full, an email about a now retired fighter's turned down bouts. The court found defendant's competitive harm argument conclusory. The email doesn't actually contain the payment terms or negotiation positions they claimed. And then the plaintiff must refile the statement unredacted. And so that was Judge Wexler's order on, that's the first of them, her order about this. And if we look through the case, if people look through it, it gives some hint at what the email and stuff is, but those are still they didn't give us the full details because those were sealed up till now. So maybe we'll get we're still waiting for the unsealed exhibits that she now cleared for. Now, the other one was Zuffa TKO's motion to seal. And this is the defendants in the case. TKO and Zuffa are the defendants against the fighters. And the defendants seek to seal exhibits 3 and 4, which are fighter health injury information, and a large block of exhibits 5 through 11, 13 through 14, 16, 18 through 20, 22 through 49, and 51 through 53. So that's basically all the exhibits. And if you remember, we talked about this when I had that document a couple weeks ago that was full of like 80 pages of blank exhibits. This is what I was referring to. And this is covering budget financials, contemplative deals, including an ESPN negotiation, which would be kind of cool if they unsealed that. Bank and credit rating, agency communications, and internal strategy discussions. They also want to target redactions to specific page lines of the statements that describe these exhibits. And they cited prior sealing orders in the Levy-Zuffa litigation. And then there was another filing by Endeavor's motion to seal. And this is the same statement as the Zuffa TKO one, but a narrower ask. Here they're just asking to seal specific and much fewer exhibits, only 3, 15, 21, and 50, in full as Endeavor's own confidential business material, plus a footnote reference describing Exhibit 21. And notably, they cited Davis v. Zuffa for sealing non-public strategy, negotiations, or operational content, because that was the agreement in Davis v. Zuffa. And so the through line for all this is the three parties are all trying to keep large chunks of the same underlying document, the plaintiff's account of what's missing from discovery, out of the public's view, right as the court has shown, and this is, we can infer this by Wexler's order, that's willing to push back on redaction requests that don't specifically justify competitive harm rather than just asserting it categorically. So we will get, it looks like some of the stuff will be unredacted and we might get it. And we will wait to see what the judge, or I should say Magistrate Wexler, has to say about the new motions to seal by Zuffa, TKO, and Endeavor.
All right. Well, we will definitely keep our eyes on this for you. Now, let's move on into our boxing coverage. Nico Ali Walsh made a tweet yesterday saying he'd spoken to senators and that, quote, changes were coming to the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act. What changes would you like to see?
Well, what changes would I like to see, or what changes do I expect to see is the question, I think.
How about both?
Okay, so first I should note that I asked around after Nico Ali Walsh brought this up, texted. It looks like, according to my sources, we should expect a new filing on the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act. We should expect it to be introduced by Ted Cruz into the Senate in the next week or two. Now, what would I hope to see included in it? I would hope to see a whole new bill. I would hope to see a bill that removes the UBOs, that preserves the sections of the Ali Act, that actually strengthens them, reinforces them, adds the provisions that they suggested by the General Accounting Office after they passed the original bill, the portions from the Professional Boxers Amendment Act that were introduced to improve the bill. I don't expect any of that. What I expect to see is a bill that's very similar to what came before with some minor changes. I know Ali Walsh and maybe some of the sanctioning organizations and other people pushing against this feel, they feel a little more confident about what's happening with the bill, the changes that have been made. But my guess, much more, is that we are going to be grossly disappointed. My understanding is some of the stuff that they got included, are minor improvements. It sounds like someone got a shorter contract length. You know how the bill right now, the introduction by Omar. Ilhan Omar's introduction, the part of the bill that says that contracts for unified boxing organizations cannot be longer than 6 years. That will be in there, but they'll have another provision they're trying to push in that says that for rookie boxers, your first contract or rookie boxers, I don't know how they define that, will be 3 years instead. Now, that's a little better, right? But you think about it, it's not the best, because what it is if you again read through the legislative history of the Ali Act or just fall boxing, the time a promoter wants to have a long contract is when they actually develop a young fighter, right? And the time that you want a shorter contract is when a fighter finds himself more valuable and is not trapped in a contract, because then he can move around and get higher pay. Here they've reversed it. It sounds like what they're going to do is the new boxer, who has very little leverage and power, he gets to have a 3-year contract if this goes through. But older boxers can have contracts up to 6 years long when they're at their most valuable, which would be the reverse of what you'd want to see to actually help boxers as much as possible. So it'll be interesting to see if that's included. It's, again, slightly better than what they have, but still nothing to be bragging about. There's some talk that they're hoping they keep in place some of the coercive contract language I heard some people are pushing. We will be interested to see if that's included. I very much doubt that'll be included, because the UFC, I shouldn't say UFC. I always say UFC when I mean TKO, Zuffa Boxing. They're going to be very much opposed to including that 12 months coercive contract provision. Some people are apparently pushing very hard to keep that in there. I doubt that'll be in there, but that's the two parts that they're looking to. My understanding that some of the pushback has kept in there, and maybe Ali Walsh is celebrating because maybe he got word that they are keeping the coercive contract provision, which would be huge. I just find it hard to believe that TKO would go along with that, because that's one of the things they clearly want to get rid of. But we will have to wait and see. But expect a new bill in a week. Then the next question is, what does that mean? Can they pass it? Can it become law if they pass up? That's the next question. And I have my doubts. I think right now with the bill that they have, I shouldn't say with the bill that they don't have a bill, but if they get the bill passed, right, they're going to be looking at a hard time getting this one to law, because just looking at it right now, what they have to do, if you go through it all, they have to first introduce the bill. We don't even have that. Then after introducing the bill, they have to have a committee markup session where people have a chance to go through, analyze the bill, introduce their own changes. Then they have to have a committee vote, right? Then after that, it goes to the full Senate, where there has to be a full Senate debate and vote. They can go relatively quick. But even after that, then it has to go to be reconcile the chamber differences. So if it gets through the Senate committee, gets voted out of first through markup, then gets voted out to the floor of the Senate, then the whole Senate votes on it. And again, this is the thing I should have noted, it needs to get a full 60 votes to pass, because you need 60 votes. Otherwise, someone can invoke cloture. You need 60, I should say, to invoke cloture. Otherwise, it's the filibuster gets into play. So you need 60 votes for it to pass the floor in the Senate. So if some senator, Democratic senator, opposes it, that would prevent it from being passed. So it has to get over that 60 vote hump. Then it has to be passed, and then it has to go to the reconcile chambers, where both the House and the Senate get together and come up with a single version. And then it has to go back to both the House and the Senate to vote on, and then it goes to the president's signature. And that's a lot of steps, considering the timeline we have. We've got like a week left, I believe, at the end of next week. I'm not sure, within a week to 10 days. The Senate goes on its August recess. The bill hasn't even been introduced yet. We have August recess. They don't come back till September. From September through October, after Congress returns after Labor Day, there's a brief window of legislation they can work on, but that entire legislation is usually on trying to pass bills to keep the government going, right? That's the fiscal bills that have to pass. Then there's a period off where they're on 5 weeks for the election, and then they come back for the lame duck session for mid-November and mid-December. And so Congress returns, and that's the period that historically is a frantic window where bipartisan, non-controversial bills are packaged together and passed. So conceivably it gets passed then, but that's a very short window for anything to happen when there's still a lot of steps to happen. So I remain optimistic that, I'm pessimistic that there won't be a new version passing the Senate, won't be introduced. I think we will get this bill introduced in the Senate, but unless Trump puts his thumb on the scale and completely tells the and reinforces the idea to the Senate, the GOP members of the Senate, that this is a must-pass bill, which it's possibly does, and they put extra energy beyond and above all the other emergencies in the Congress right now, I just don't see them having time to actually get this turned into a law before the end of this Congress, and then they got to start all over next year.
All right. Devin Haney, Keyshawn Davis, their purse bid will be live streamed on WBO's socials July 27th. Explain to us what a purse bid is, how it works, and why it's so very important to boxers.
Well, this is, as you know, Stephanie, we've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us really don't like AI too much.
No, we do not.
We do not like AI. But one thing I do like about AI, or one form of AI I do like, is there's something called Notebook LM. I don't know if anybody else just uses it ever. But Notebook LM I like because what it does, it lets you search through documents to find, whatever key stuff you're looking for. And what I did is I took all of my congressional boxing documents and loaded into Notebook LM. So no longer do I have to sit there and go, oh, where's that part where they talked about this? Because I've read through almost all of these, which is kind of sad in itself that I actually did that. But now with Notebook LM, I can dig it up. So I thought, what would be nice to look up? What does they say a purse bid is? What is the purpose according to the congressional record for a purse bid? So I cheated and used that. And so for a purse bid, it's defined as a public auction of the promotional rights to a specific boxing match. Okay, that's a really good definition, actually. And what that means is if a match is going to take place, it is turned into the public. Other entities besides the promoters of those boxers are allowed to bid to be the right to be the promoter of that event. And so this mechanism typically comes into play when a champion and a challenger, it sometimes involves when you're in elimination matches, but usually it's a champion and a challenger. And usually it involves the challenger being a mandatory contender. That seems to be the way it's worked the last couple of decades, almost always now is. So you have a mandatory contender wanting a bout with a champion. They cannot reach a mutual agreement on the financial terms of the bout. And so under these rules, the right to promote the fight now, because they could not come to terms, is put out for a bid to any promoter that is officially registered with the relevant sanctioning organization. And what this does is what makes this so beneficial to fighters, at least theoretically beneficial to fighters. It eliminates the coercive options because of the Ali Act. There's as we mentioned just a little while ago, there's provision that prevents coercive contracts. You cannot grant rights beyond 12 months for the right to have a bout, but also it specifically mentions you cannot grant any rights. You cannot demand any rights for mandatory bouts. So if it goes to purse bid and this is a mandatory match, what that means is when you win the bid, you cannot demand those boxers to sign rights to you beyond this one fight. And so it's great for fighters because you have this one fight that has a purse bid for it, and you are technically a free agent or revert to your previous promoter afterwards. So there's no negotiated options or extensions. So that's one thing that's great for it. They also, as they note in it, it's democratic. Industry experts in the congressional record, they describe the purse bid as the most democratic process in boxing because it allows for true market forces to prevail by permitting several promoters to bid in an open market for the right to stage a high profile fight. the other thing it does, it breaks promotional log jams. Purse bids serve as a mechanism to ensure the mandatory bouts and unification fights actually take place when rival promotions or competing television networks are at a stalemate. Now, I should note that's why they're theoretically supposed to work. We've ran into problems over and over again that the promoters and broadcasters keep standing in the way for this to work the way it's supposed to. But that's the way it's supposed to work. It's the problem we've run into in more recent years, still since the passed this bill, and we've seen more purse bids in recent years, I should note. But we still run into a problem is that, as much as it's supposed to protect against favoritism by forcing a public auction, as much as it's supposed to include a fair purse it's in terms of fair division of the pot, all that, there is still interference by broadcasters, promoters that prevent the purse bid from happening. But what really helps for boxers is but historically, purse bids have led to fighters often getting the biggest purses of their career, much more than what they're currently getting paid. So it's a mechanism because, again, it enters into a free market system where multiple bidders come in. When you have multiple bidders, prices go up. You often see boxers get paid more on bouts that go to purse bids than their other matches. Although we do have stories which technically are illegal under the regulations of promoters having side deals with their fighter over the purse bid, where they will circumvent the process by entering into a secret side deal where they split the proceeds of the purse bid with their fighter. So in other words, they will give their boxer a prearranged amount, then enter a purse bid that's very big, but their boxer has already been removed from the equation, so they can actually save on the amount that they're going to pay. So there's a lot of ways to get around it, and they should, hopefully maybe if they want to add that to the new bill, a mechanism to enforce the process better, that would be helpful. But it's a process that it's oddly enough, you hear Andy Foster railing against it, but it's a process I noted. What it does is it lets, when two sides for boxers with two different promoters cannot come to an agreement, it allows a fight to take place by opening it up to everybody to bid for it, and the highest bidder, the bid being how much you're going to pay the boxers. I should have noted that in the beginning. People are probably confused. The highest bidder, how much you're going to pay the boxers, wins. They get to put on the bout, and the boxers get all the money from the purse bid.
And what would happen to purse bids if this current iteration of the Revival Act, the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act, were to pass?
Well, there would still be purse bids involving the sanctioning organization bouts, because remember, the bill doesn't change anything, Stephanie. You know that. Didn't you hear? The bill doesn't change anything. It just gets an option. It just creates an option for fighters. No, the fighters continuing in the traditional method would still have purse bids, but those signing to the UBO model, it would remove the purse bids because there's no longer mandatories. There's no longer fighters under different contract, under different promoters that have to do co-promotion with. None of those issues, they're locked in. Anybody that's going to be fighting for the title of a UBO is, by definition, signed to that UBO. And so there's no need ever to go to a purse bid. And again, there's no such thing as a mandatory. The UBO determines who gets to fight for the title.
And even with the way that it sits currently, where sometimes a little skirting of the rules happens, even without extra enforcement, this is still the best possible option for the athletes as it stands right now, correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the best possible outcome for the athletes is just a very robust system, competition where everybody's bidding on them.
But if nothing were to change, this is still a good system for them.
Well, purse bids, even, listen, there's a lot of fixes I would love to do to the Ali Act. There's a lot of fixes I would like to do for boxing. One thing I wouldn't get rid of is I would strengthen purse bids. I think purse bids, because just like it says, it creates a process. It's based on the idea that if you are a contender, right? A mandatory contender, you're going to retain your ability to challenge for the title. If a negotiated contract cannot come to terms on a fight that has to take place for the title, then it's opened up to multiple bidders. That's only a win for the fighters. That's technically a win for the fans, because the fight will then take place. Now, promoters and stuff, and their fighters will often find a way to get step arounds and find ways to get out of it sometimes. But overall, it's beneficial to fighters. My one thing I would do, and I'm on X, talk to people about this. The one thing I would like to see happen is I would turn purse bids into a TV show, make them live. Let us see the bids. Let it see like it's NFL draft day. Or the NBA lottery day, the day when they draw the lottery, who's going to get the number one pick. Let us see all the promoters in the room submitting their envelope to the sanctioning organization, and then pulling out and then determining who's the win. Make drama out of it. I think that would be great. Make it a live stream event, and put a lot of drama into it. I would love to see that. Maybe we'll get that with the upcoming Haney purse bid, if that ever happens. But that's the one thing I would change, is make it more drama. But I would keep purse bids. I think that's one mechanism that promotes co-promotion, prevents log jams, they noted, and increases fighter pay.
All right. I wanted to tell you something. We had someone reply to me. I posted about our most recent show about Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury have made huge amounts of money in their careers, and last year was no different. TKO wants to change boxing with carve-outs that limit athletes from making money like this via their Revival Act. Now, I had someone reply to me, and he basically said, he deleted his post. But he basically said that boxers like Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury were what was wrong with boxing, and that basically TKO was going to fix it with Zuffa boxing. And so I replied to him, TKO has a $40 billion evaluation right now. That money doesn't have, he said that money was going to run out if boxers kept asking for big money like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. But that's not true, right? The money doesn't have to run out because, all they have to do is not be fucking greedy, right?
Well, I'm a little lost what that person's trying to argue here, because the valuation of TKO, based almost exclusively on the UFC and WWE, is largely based on the fact that, they have, concentrated the markets completely under the roof in both pro wrestling and MMA, especially MMA, where all, as we've noted several times, is it's in the internal documents from the UFC. They have 90% of all revenue generated goes in the space of MMA, goes to the UFC. So they've concentrated the entire market instead of split up amongst several entities. All the money, all the attention, all the eyeballs of the fans, everything's in one entity. So they have 90% of the revenue. And that's one reason they're so valuable. The second reason is because they have market power, then monopsony power, technically, over their athletes. Exactly. They can pay their athletes much less than they would in other sports where they have much more competition. And because they pay their athletes much less, they have huge profit margins. Yes. Massive profit margins. I mean, just, whenever I showed the UFC finances to someone that's has an MBA or a CPA that's going to help me with something, they're always shocked. They cannot believe a company like this is that profitable. And that's why they're worth so much, because, their profit margins are insane. Now, they could pay a lot more if the profit margins were less. If there were they wouldn't have to, though. They never have to, because there is no competition. But if you split up the UFC into 5 entities, let's say, each doing the same amount of business that they're doing in total. So instead of the $1.5 billion in business, you had 5 entities that each did $300 million in business. But because they're in massive competition.
To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Okay, the face!